Yeah, we're down.
It's like little intro.
So I think today we can like introduce segments.
Damn.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Full Rat Moon. This is us having fun. Oh my goodness, people have come into the waiting room. Let me see if I can let them in from here. Connie Schinkel. Welcome. More people in the waiting room. Let's see. Okay, everyone's in. We are recording. We are live. Tiana and Connie have arrived. That kind of rhymed. We are drinking really good tea just for this coming year. You may or may not know that. I'm sure we're going to talk about it in a bit, but we have a rabbit year coming up, and not just any rabbit year, triple rabbit.
Triple rabbit, yeah.
That's 12 lucky rabbit feet.
Yeah, it's the 13th moon. If just as a geek out technical thing, this is an intercalary system. Say that 5 times fast, which means that you're matching up lunar and solar indicators in the Tongshu. I believe the Hebrew calendar is like this as well. Some other older calendars have this aspect. It's not strictly a solar calendar, strictly a solar calendar. In fact, it's more of a lunar calendar, but it does have a solar aspect to it, which means that because those two calendrical systems don't really match up, it means about every 3 to 5 years, there is a year where there's 13 moons instead of 12. And so in this water rabbit year, there will be two rabbit moons. So that means we'll be going through an extended period of spring, which is to balance out the fact that technically the year actually starts before spring does. So it's gonna be even more important to take it slow, not really don't rush the rabbit. That's not a good idea.
Okay, don't rush the rabbit. Now, the way this measures, because we still have the same amount of time, we still have the same 365 days. And so
right.
The way that I understand it is that they knock a little bit of time off the first moon and knock a little bit of time off the next moon and kind of squeeze in the extra moon that way.
Yeah, I mean, we've been knocking days off since the last time we had an intercalary, since the last time we had 13 moons, which was about 3 years ago, maybe a little longer. I'd have to go back and look. So we've been knocking 3 days or so. Actually, I take that back. About a day, a little over a day. That's how much they don't match up. So every moon, there's like this day that kind of gets knocked to the side. So by the time we get to this point, for instance, so the rat moon is ending before this calendar year does this. So it ends on the 24th of December. Excuse me, which is kind of unusual. It usually ends in January, and then the ox moon goes from sometime early January to early February, where the tiger moon begins. That's typically the range, but in this particular case, the ox moon begins in December. So we're already kind of, so we need that extra moon to basically put the end of next year on track, kind of thing. So yeah, so there's plenty of room at this point for a second rabbit moon to exist. So it's all rabbit all the time.
And really interesting that it was double rabbit on a rabbit year, because that doesn't always happen, right? It could be a double goat or a double horse.
Yeah, sometimes it's not even related to the rat, not the chi character of the year isn't necessarily what repeats.
Yeah.
So you might have a double goat moon. And usually they don't repeat toward either at the beginning or the end of the year. So it is actually kind of unique. Because usually if you have a 13th moon, it's either, it's somewhere in the summer is usually where it's slotted in.
Wow. So, well, that said, special year. So we pressed a special cake. It is a 2013 late spring harvest Hmong Hai region Yunnan Raipur. Say that fast. Yeah, that's what we got. I tasted a bunch of teas. I like this one. So we're going to stick our brand on it. And that's what we're drinking tonight. It kind of has a nice glutinous rice flavor, a nice chenpi tangerine peel flavor. You're going to get some nice Chinese medicine vibes off it. Yeah, so this is a spleen brew. This is great for digestion. Okay. And first steeping, nice and dark. The journey has begun. Welcome, Brother Seanan.
Thanks. Yeah, it's great to be here as always. Yeah, a bit of a sleepy time. I've had this, I was like, how should I talk about this? I'm having this reflection about like the thing, if I'm talking about resolutions, no more empowerment. I feel like a lot of my daily writing sometimes is sort of taken with, this is what you should do, like, trying to give people like, look at it this way, or little tricks, to empower, enable people, like, don't worry about this, look at that. And there's some, I'm a pig, so generosity always wins. That said, like, it got me thinking about like, in the process of the daily writing, like how I relate to what's happening right now. And at some point, it kind of occurred to me over the last few days, because the last few days were pretty dark, that at some point in time, you just got to be like, yeah, there's nothing good here. Like, and it's probably better not to compulsively look for something good. It's actually better for you to just accept that there's probably nothing good here, and just keep the lights on. Celebrate that you can drink tea, and that you have like warm covers, warm, healthy food, maybe a little money in the bank, some level of resources to carry you through. That's actually where rat is all about, is like getting from point A to point B. Rats, by some measure, there's no beginning, to the cycle of time, of course, but like there is a kind of beginning sort of thing, which rat is one of those sort of beginning kinds of things. It represents sort of the turning point, right? So you get to, that's why its placement this year is a little bit off, because technically we're still descending. Okay. So when it comes to yin, the image I usually use is floating to the bottom of a pool, a swimming pool, right? So we're kind of, floating downward. Some people like to swim very fast to try to get to the bottom really quickly, but there actually is no bottom. So all you're doing is just swimming to something fathomless, is the notion. There is no real bottom. It's a whole Chungpa's phrase that, you're falling in the midst of, the bad news is that you're falling. There's no ground. Yeah. Like, so that's where we've been, since the beginning of winter. And with the rat, it's just progressively, actually, I'll go all the way back to the pig, and the pig was like, all right, everybody, get cozy. And so, the 10th moon is like, what kind of outfit you're going to wear to bed. And with the rat moon, it's like, you should be asleep. So we could wrap this up in 5 minutes, like, get out of here, like, go home, go rest, like, turn off all, like, actually, be in darkness. Because darkness isn't something you should avoid or It's actually something, it's important to embrace because it's yin.
Backtrack a second.
Hmm.
You said we could wrap this up in 5 minutes and like just stop, right? And that's so funny you say that because that's been the theme in our last several talks. It's like, yo, wind it up, like wrap it up. Time to go home and settle. And
Knock it up.
that's been a theme in my newsletters. I've been writing about that. Like, yeah, settle down, go to sleep, don't do nothing. And then I'm surprised when nobody comes to class.
Well, I'll be honest, like there's, because I'm a physical practitioner as well. And it's been, and I'm 51 years old, right? So I've entered into the back nine. I'm in the back nine, right? So plenty more holes to play, but like, I know where I'm at. And I've been feeling that specifically. I mean, I've always been, I think it's good to have a healthy relationship toward death. But once you turn 50, and I'm sure there's plenty of people here that can speak to this, it's significant shift, right? And so this particular moon, and so my physical practices shifted a lot, not swinging kettlebells every day, like actually focusing on more internal arts as much as I can, like what I know, like kind of working with what I have. And the point is, this particular winter has been really interesting for me because I was like, it's okay. All I want to make sure is that I can still touch my toes, still stretch, but I'm actually, following my own advice. Don't sweat, like I'm actually trying, okay, don't sweat. I can move around, but like, don't be in this place where you're like copiously sweating and, like retain, keep the fluids, right? Keep the fluids in place. Let them circulate within, right? So that's Negong, right? Is the circulation within. So that's, the Taoist tradition. And it's ultimately to, you're preserving at this point because the environment is so yin that you have this little ember, a little flame, and you're just trying to keep it warm. And like, that's the image, while you're floating to the bottom of the pool. So we haven't reached, bottom yet. We still have a couple more weeks. And this is actually, we just crossed over into this sort of threshold on the chi nodes, which is that, what I call the era of refraction. Like when you stick something in. Which one? Which one? I think I am organized. Era of refraction, meaning that like when you stick that the pole into the water, it has this kind of refractive quality. Well, that's everywhere. Like so it's sort of like shadows playing tricks. And I've seen this like in my kitchen. It's like, whoa, what was that? It's like just the sort of play of the light. It's not anything you can really describe, but it's the environment of yin. It's just so liminal, you're from a Taoist perspective, there's 60,000 different realms overlapping ours continuously, and from a Buddhist standpoint, there's equally number of different realms, like all influencing us all the time. So this is the point in the season where yin is this liminality of existence is just much more prevalent. So it's not that you shouldn't like trust your senses. It's just, as they say, don't believe everything you think. So bringing to the point, like of stripping back, stripping away. This is the rat. Rat is both this, is often portrayed as accumulative, right? In small little pieces, and perseverance can take down the whole mountain vibe, right? But it's also, it's a deconstruction process, right? So that deconstruction process is related to survival, meaning that like, yeah, I don't really need to swing kettlebells. It's actually not really, it's not factored into my survival. I can actually not do that, and I can allow myself the ability to conserve chi and to minimize action, how much can I strip away? Yeah, quite a lot. I mean, we live good. we live real good, like probably too good, like all the things that we think are necessities, they're not, so that's a good reflection,
For sure. Outside of fire, shelter, water, food.
Yeah.
It's all cherry.
And so those things that you need, as it turns out, they're the thing everybody needs, right? So that's part of the communal aspect of the rat, which is like, as I've mentioned in my writing, like nobody has everything they need. That's why we need each other, right? I know, it's right there.
Wow.
And we all need the same thing, and maybe have a lot of it. You got this piece, and then it becomes, necessity is the mother of invention. And we get together, and you bring over noodles, and I bring over potatoes, and
Stone soup.
And we do the thing.
Wow. Nobody has what they need, so that's why we need each other. Wow.
Yeah. So strip it down. That's that's why I say it's not really about empowerment, so much. This moon, like this is how you make it, turn it into something positive, or like this is how you like ultimately get ready for next year, like, no, actually, you're actually not supposed to do anything like you can really just be in the dark. You have that unique capacity as a human being to actually consider your own condition, and it is a birthright. All the wisdom traditions talk about it, and you should not pass up the opportunity by distracting yourself with ephemera, because the ephemera is everywhere. But if you have this rat mind and you come back to the essentials, eventually you come to places that are uncomfortable. This is a tiger year, so a water tiger year winter is meant to be challenging. True story.
Thank you for that perspective, because it's really easy in new age circles.
I hate it.
I want the light. I want to be the light. I'm a light worker. I'm working towards the light. I'm enlightened. And to embrace dark. There's a lot of growth and a lot of potential. And, the treasure you seek is in the cave you're scared to enter, right? So I really appreciate that view of the abyss is something worthwhile, because the common conversation, everybody wants the light.
Yeah, it's part of our, it's part of our theistic heritage, that we, do shadow work in order to eliminate the shadow, in order to illuminate or transform. I'm sure someone else has a better way of describing it that makes it sound more nuanced, and there is definitely some nuance in it. It's only to say, and there's definitely value in that. It's just important to recognize that the value is rooted in a theistic tradition, a theistic sensibility of like a craving for deliverance, for resolution. And then this system it's all cyclical, and it's all of equal value. Hello, it's all of equal value. Like there's no, favoring the summer over the winter. It's all the same, in terms of what it brings forward. Because, and it's not necessarily, this isn't a linear, system where it's like or like an evolutionary path. It's just over and over and over again. So it's so it's difficult to transcribe that desire for a deliverance or transformation onto a system that's cyclical, because ultimately, whatever path of transformation that you're currently experiencing, it's one sliver of a spiral. You've taken this piece and stretched it out, and maybe it has like infinite facets, and you can see backwards and forwards in time and all that. But it's still one sliver of an infinite spiral, So it's destined to change because it's all impermanent. So don't get carried away. Is basically what Bing would say, right? Like, don't, not so much. Like, slow down. And just recognize where you are, and that's I think that's the advantage of the Tongshu practice. It's like, yeah, it's supposed to be like this. Sorry, there's nothing wrong with you. If you're feeling like depressed or anxious, like, oh yeah, for the last few days I've been very anxious, walking around the house for no reason, just like thinking that I left something in the other room, and like getting there and be like, what am I don't know what I'm, just gonna go sit back down, like, and just having a moment, doesn't resolve. It's still kind of tension circulating, like, whoa, so many cofactors involved in that, where you are, the time of day, what's happening in your own cycles individually. So don't clench.
Wow, fascinating, because how many of us would sit with that experience and then choose to drown it out with a substance of some sort, or busy themselves, or just start scrolling through something to
Show of hands.
To not have to face that uncertainty and that discomfort in a moment.
Yeah.
We all have our little escapes.
Yeah. And so Netflix, all that stuff. Yeah, and nothing wrong with that either, honestly. Because again, you're not really so the dark is just there. Doesn't require to be addressed. So you can do it or not. Actually, it doesn't matter. But don't get make big declarations either way. Like, actually you're surviving, you're just getting through. That's what rat's all about. So if it's tough, yeah, congratulations, you're in the game.
Okay, so here we are in the game, middle moon of winter. We got one more moon left in Ox, and that's still do nothing.
The Ox is going to be, once we get to
turn the soil a little bit.
There's said there can be some anticipation. Yeah, for sure. This is it's a water ox, so the mood is not light. The mood is pretty like for the most part, people are gonna be like, oh God, let's get there already. It's a little bit like that. So you can make those preparations. I mean, ultimately, how we're able to engage with the water ox has everything to depend on like how much we've minimized action and conserved chi. When it comes to preparing, what good is yin? I mean, not that we've already mentioned like nothing. Like that's the whole point. Like rest means just rest, not rest because then you'll be fresh. Like it's just rest. So any kind of caboose you want to attach to it is like, yeah, that's limited, in terms of actually relating to it. It's not, discouraged. I might discourage it, but like, it's not discouraged out there, like everybody's like, well, you need to rest, because you can be ready for work tomorrow, so we have that relationship to rest that is generative. And I think that there is an element of that that I've been studying on, which means to grow quality yin. This term, growing quality yin, where in the relax, in the emptying, if you were, like emptying, not just rest, but empty, oneself down to those sort of bare bones, bare minimum I've had these days recently where it's just like, you get up plenty early, then you have tea and, maybe, I do writing and like handle some affairs. And then it's like 3 o'clock and then it's like, the day just disappears on you. And by that time you're like, oh, I have to get ready for bed, like over like that. And so as that's happening more and more and much more intensely, as we go toward the solstice, there's this kind of blurring together. And that's just something to, you're just surviving that experience. But in that process of relating to oneself in the dark, and allowing oneself to be in a place of receiving and engagement, right? There is this notion of like growing quality yin. Oh, what does that mean? The way I understand it right now is when you get to spring, where does your motivation come from? What inspires you? Why do you have inspiration? Like at all? Like, and to be honest, some people, like if they're busy all winter, they get to spring and they're like, I don't care. Like, yeah.
I parallel this, not to cut you off, I parallel this with like not eating late at night. And so that when you wake up in the morning, you have true appetite.
True.
And so don't busy yourself in winter,
right?
So that when spring comes and true inspiration arises, you can discern it.
This is what I would mean, or what I think is meant by growing quality yin. Yin itself is meaning, direction, purpose. What's the proper balance of yin to yang?
80-20.
Right? 80-20, right? You need a whole lot of yin, which is potential, right? And just a little bit of yang to like get it going, right? That's the idea. So if you cultivate quality yin, that means you have discernment. That means you have not so aggressive, focus, but you have some sense of like, I'm really looking forward to spring because whatever, like this appetite, it comes from being in this exhaustion, in this emptying, while still holding on to this little ember, right? For its own sake, not because, X, Y, or Z, just the feeling, of inspiration, just the feeling of, movement, the appetite for movement, just staying warm. I saw this, I'm sure, I don't know if some other people saw it, but like there was this article, it's like scientists have discovered, yes, that's true. If you're cold, it can make you sick.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's verifiably true. This is how cold makes you sick. I was like, oh, yeah, like how stupid, like so stupid. You spent all that time, thousands of years. You've got people saying, and this is borne out by all of our experience. It's like not a delusion. Like we've been saying that, for a long time, but you did your study. To finally, certifiably prove that cold does make you sick. Wow. Okay.
It's kind of why we call them colds.
Yeah, good for you, man. You. So stay warm, and circulate chi. That's all you. Health is wealth.
Yeah.
Stay healthy.
I like this idea of cultivating quality yin because you hit it right on the head. It's like we rest to prepare for the next day, and so. Am I really resting or am I drawing the arrow back to spring forward, right? So I'm just gathering more potential energy to get kinetic again.
Right.
And so that's not resting.
That's not rest.
That's just anti-yang. To go more yang.
This is projecting our chi into the future. Right. And that's also a feature of rat, like to worry about the details, during the course of the day, rat hour is 11 to 1, when you should be asleep. But it's also a great time to wake up and be, So, I mean, it's not that kind of like pushing our chi forward. It's not moral, like it's not bad if you do that. You're worried about spring. Yeah, like, oh yeah, fine. You know, like that's the darkness. As I say, like darkness has no content. The only content it has is what it reflects back, what we bring in, right? So it's like that kind of dark mirror. So if you're in this anxious place, you know, the content of your dreams, all of these things, like very meaningful, you know, even if you're just like, that was so bizarre, you know, like you can't make heads or tails of it. It's okay. You know, like it's not everything is supposed to be, you know, dissected and analyzed, but there can be some instances where you're just, you know, I'm really worried about this, and it might unlock, you know, some level of reflection, and not only that, like our our individual reflections, maybe also reflections of like our community and the people in close contact, right? Because we are in this kind of rat pack, reflecting one another, mirroring one another constantly. Is our mutual level of mutual influence is incredibly strong. It shouldn't be overlooked, you know. So if you don't have a supportive environment, you know, you're even more anxious because you don't know who you can trust. You feel alone. It's a very dangerous time to feel alone.
Shout out to everybody who's out there alone right now. This cup of tea is for you.
And there's this hexagram 29, and if people are interested in the Zhou, otherwise known as the I Ching, the only translation I think is worth a shit. That's my favorite one. Is of course Ming's, yeah. And you can get that on DaYuanCircle.com, DaYuan circle.com. Hey, listen, like, I'm a fanboy.
Well, that brings us to the segment. What would Ming do?
You would be home right now.
That's it. That's the segment.
Actually, I think he probably come out. He's probably here now. I don't know. Yeah. The hexagram 29, which is because hexagrams are associated with turns of the season. And at the solstice, which implies making the best of a bad situation. Okay, but the solstice is kind of like, okay, we made it. What do we got left? You know, because like that's the halfway point, and like you're kind of already exhausted, right? So it's like, how do you make this? How do we get our second win or a third or fourth win? You know, for the journey back. You know, which is why ox moon is don't do anything, because you gain strength from not making any changes, because you're not wasting any chi. You're going with convention, you're going with precedent, you're walking familiar paths, because it doesn't take a lot of energy to do it. And there's an ancestral component to it. You know, the appetite you have to walk a certain path is because all these other people have walked that path too. You know, so you can draw on that support. Actually, very important time of year to not make any big changes. You know, don't consider like, you know, we should, you know, like, no, you wait till spring, like maybe, you know, halfway through spring before you start doing stuff like that. Like, you know, so that's the reason why the ox moon is don't do anything, is because, you know, we still got a long way to go and we just ate 3/4 of our supplies, you know, so now we really got to stretch it out. Yeah. So if you've been frugal, if you've conserved chi and you manage your resources well, then when you get to ox moon, man, maybe you can sort of anticipate, make an investment, you know, do some exploratory things. But for the most part, no. You know, you should just kind of don't be in such a hurry. Like, why is everybody in a big I'm sorry? You know, like it's the same thing. Like when people go, you see in the gyms, you know, after the first of the year, for the first month, it's packed. Like everybody is trying to make that change. And in the middle of March, it's empty again, right? It's the same fools that were there last March, you know. So that's the problem. If you think that in the ox moon, you're going to make all these big changes, most likely you're only going to reaffirm the groove that you've already developed.
And that's such an ox thing, right? Walk that well-trodden line, right? Reaffirm that path, that groove. This is the easy way. Go with the grain, right? Go with the flow. It's the course is set.
Yeah.
Right.
It's nourishing, you know, and it's sustaining. So that way you can, again, save your resources for the spring where you can launch.
Yeah, and it's not like the ox is agile either. It's not like, you know, dodging or, you know.
Right. Not so adept,
Yeah.
you know, but is carrying forward, the idea is carrying forward the perseverance of the rat.
Okay.
Because in this particular point in time, our perseverance is in frugality, measuring things out, being attentive, you know, like maybe even a little bit suspicious, you know, like we're just kind of sizing each other up a little bit, you know, and there's various kinds of healthy expression in that. Like there's nothing wrong with being a little insecure. You should be. Like this is the time to be insecure. You know, that's the problem with, I think that's one of the problems in the expressions of this particular culture, is that any kind of insecurity is somehow some sort of failing on either your part or the society's part. Actually, you should feel insecure. That's perfectly in alignment.
Now, the Western listening that I have, this contemporary ear that I have, it's like it hears this chaotic time, this primordial stew of potential. I want to capitalize on it somehow. It's like, how can we make the most of this? And perhaps is this a good time for brainstorming, vision boarding, you know, kind of charting out ideas, dreaming big visions, and
maybe for monkeys. There's only 2 T characters that actually could make something of this time, and they happen to be dragons and monkeys, and it's mostly because they share in the trine, yeah. But the reason why they share a trine is each one is resourceful. So the rat's playing a short game. You know, we have enough for dinner, and like save that for breakfast. You know, they're playing the short game, and dragons are playing very long game. And so they can see like, oh, okay, that'll serve me, you know, next summer or what have you. Particularly next summer, dragons might be thinking about like, okay, this and this and this. If I do this, then that will be ready in the summer. You know, by the time you get to Dragon Moon, and the monkeys are somewhere in between.
got it. Sounds like a Jing Chi Shen.
Right. Right.
Fun.
So yeah, you know, monkeys dream your. Go ahead, dream your tail off.
Okay.
I don't know, the rest of you shouldn't listen. The rest of you should be like, okay.
I like this tea.
It's really good. I enjoy it. It's there's not any bitterness at all.
Yeah, that rice flavor was really prominent first couple brews, and now it's like kind of soft. And
yeah.
The idea that we were going with this tea is we pressed teas in the past, and they're premium, but they're kind of like special occasion teas. And so the idea that we wanted to do with this one is kind of have something that you can enjoy day to day, and you know, not feel that you have to reserve it for special occasions.
Oh, that's great. I love that kind of stuff.
Day to day.
Daily intimacies.
Yeah, because then you also get to build a practice around it too. You know, when you have special tea for special occasions, you know. Quite frankly, in the conversation of cultivating good yin, it's a
right,
great chance to slow down.
You're right. Agreed. Yeah, any kind of ritual that gets you to slow down. That's like great it's a good idea. Even just taking a walk, like whatever rituals that you can implement. There's these amazing windows throughout the winter where like this last Sunday was actually really profound, even though it's, if you've been cultivating austerity, if you got to Sunday opens up this kind of like complete departure from any kind of sense of productivity. And then you actually get to see what you have, like you get to kind of be at home in your space, in the world that you've created for yourself. And, examine your assumptions about like what that world consists of. So, I mean, there's a lot of really amazing opportunity in yin. If we're talking opportunity and making the most of things, it's really about like how you can deconstruct your life. Because the Taoist perspective, they're always encouraging deconstruction into, non-conceptual, right? Anytime you get conceptual, hey, you got it, rip it apart, like that's the, if you notice it. And, and from my understanding in the Buddhist tradition is, you cultivate more getting a hold of it. Whereas the Taoist perception is like, you'll get a hold of it when you get a hold of it. You shouldn't have to try, but the Buddhist sect, you should try, You should get a hold of it, like, and these are the ways you can get a hold of it, and get a hold of your conceptions so you can either push the pedal on them or rip them apart or, whatever.
Reminds me of Rumi. Somewhere in between there's a field.
Yeah. And that field's like everywhere. And that's the beauty of being immersed in yin, is no escape. You can't get away from it. And it becomes so much more strenuous as you're talking about like the kind of checking out and like busying yourself and all those things. So you can find the social networks that actually help you do that. They're like, oh, you're trying to busy yourself and escape too? Come follow me. Like we're burning our chi. We're dead by 54. It sounds morbid and grim, but it's their whole industry is built around it.
Taking from this guy, 51 choose rosy cheeks.
Yeah, it's all this tea. Yes, I can put my hands flat. That's
there was pinnacle. This whole campaign. There was a time in my flexibility journey that I could touch my chin to my toe. And
never got that.
I wanted to like do this nationwide thing, just get on a tour bus and like, hey kids, can you touch your toes?
So great.
And it was something like they did a ridiculous study or some outrageous percentage of the population cannot touch their toes.
And of children.
Yeah.
Children. Like you can't touch a kid, can't. Yeah.
Well, then what about this?
Yeah.
The toe,
Right.
But yeah, flexibility, well, in its own way.
Yeah.
Flexibility is not the practice for this season. Right? No. That's a spring, summer.
Yeah, it's more of a spring, summer. That's true. Stay warm. Get the massage wand out. Just circulate, man, dude. Hey, get the massage wand out. Like, partner up.
Well, let's see. Is this a good time to segue into questions? Let's see. How do they know which moon repeats? That was Tiana's question.
I don't know. I mean, it's just the tradition. I don't know who makes those decisions. I remember when Ming was asked that, he's like, I don't know. It's just sort of, we'd have to track down the.
Darren must know because it's in the act.
I think it's mathematical though, meaning that it's all mathematical. So there's not like a group of 5 Swiss dudes making the decision. I think it's actually math. It's in a calculus and an equation. So I'm sure I tried, because I tried to actually, I think it was the rooster year. I think it must have been because I was like trying to deconstruct it and break it down and find out how to, it is like big watch, you're trying to take it apart and see how it works. And so that's, I did some research on, and it's all recurring, you know, so like maybe it goes through a cycle of like 5 different iterations, perhaps, where like then it's the second moon, and then it's the 5th moon, and then it's the 7th moon, and then it goes back to the 3rd moon, and then it goes to the 4th moon, and you know, and then it'll go back to the 2nd moon, you know, so like there's tons of those types of patterns, tons
like
of
a magic square type pattern.
it's all math.
Yeah.
It's all math. For instance, like this is completely esoteric, but like a metal pig chi character on a daily basis appears in it's the same with every chi character of the day, right? So there's the years, there's the moons that have a chi character, but there's also days and hours as well. So and how they correspond to the 28 lunar indicators, right? So throughout the course of a set of period of time, any one particular chi character, I'm using metal pig, occurs every 60 days. And so it goes through a cycle of 60 and then comes back again. When it lands in a particular lunar mansion, right? And it goes through a cycle of 8 lunar mansions and then repeats. Or 7. 7, I think 7. Yeah, 7, and then goes back.
Go with your gut.
Yeah, no, 7 because but yeah, 7. So you know, these are just these are patterns that exist, not just the patterns that you can lay out, but the style in which of the pattern itself of repetition actually is repeated, right? So if you have something like that occurring with the 28 lunar indicators in any particular given chi character, then you're going to have that with things like the intercalary months and where they appear. So that's why I say it probably does something like that. And you don't get an intercalary, you don't get a 13 moon year, but every, again, like 3 to 5 years, depends. So yeah, it was one of those things that Ming just was like, it's just the way it works. Don't be a Swiss watchmaker about it. It's just the way it is. Not worth the time to figure out. But who's to say? I was talking about the 29th. I would look it up, read it. If you have a copy of the Joey, any copy, I Ching, read Hexagram 29. That is very helpful this time of year. From now until the winter solstice, which would be on the 24th. And then, you know, solstice in this particular calendrical system, the Tongshu.
24th, not 21st.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, pretty sure. Right. Yeah. So the 3-day period is an interesting astronomical phenomenon, but not necessarily related to the movement of chi. I take that back. It's the 22nd, not the 24th. So yeah, right around that 21st, 22nd period is when the solstice usually occurs. So there's the astronomical phenomenon, which is the 3-day period that you're talking about. And then most people consider that's our solstice done, right? 3 days. No, it's like it's a chi period. And how we describe that is it's basically a plateau. Solstices are, you know, the bottom of the pool. So like there's a little level place where there's maybe some texture that's happening in this particular solstice period. And then the tide in within, you know, within that solstice period, you have this kind of interplay and sort of settling, you know, of this relationship between yin and yang. And I think this is actually at the end of the solstice. That's when the black tortoise comes out to the surface of the water and releases the annual chi and gives, you know, basically sends the signal for yang to return. It's all very quaint, but it just is referring to the idea that like this is a generalized period of time that has texture, rather than thinking of it as like a 3-day, related to the sun, like it's way more dynamic. It's an environment, that's responding to, yes, the sun and everything else.
There's a movement called Black Tortoise Greets the Rising Sun.
What? We need to find these people.
And it's just,
Can we be part of it?
it's just this movement. And
I thought you meant social movement.
no,
My bad. I was like, we have friends.
yeah. Yeah, it's a Qigong movement. Oh, that's interesting. What if that became another one of our segments? A Qigong move inspired by content. So yeah, Black Tortoise, you said this is the time when ZhenWu comes out. He's the Black Tortoise to the north.
Yeah.
Now he's greeting the rising sun after the solstice.
Right.
Right, because we're in the bottom of the pool. That's when the tortoise can come up.
Right.
Right. And then so the movement, my teacher said you do 100 times a day, you live to 100 years old. What you're going to do is tuck your chin to your chest. Of course, don't fight the feeling. If you can't get this range, don't force anything. Right. But we're just going to tuck the chin, drop down, inch forward, and lift up. Maybe even give yourself a little bit of an underbite and feel how that makes the skin of the neckline taut. Right? Then you're going to release that underbite, jut forward, tuck back to your chest, and then lift. That way you get some traction in the cervical spine. Okay? So up and back, that would be considered one cycle. My teacher says you do 100 cycles, you live to 100 years old. Now, granted, he passed at 96, but he was a juicy 96. Okay? So there's some validity yet. Now, when you do this, I was like, what's so special about this movement? Why 100 times a day, 100 years old? And it kind of dawned on me that the principle of long tendons, long life, we spoke that earlier, but there's also the principle of good circulation, good health. And so if you look at this movement, in essence, it's a big pump. You're pumping cerebral spinal fluid, you're pumping your salivary glands, you're pumping your lymph, you're pumping your thyroid, you're pumping your carotid artery, jugular vein, you're threading your vagus nerve. So much juicy stuff is getting pumped as you do it. And so it kind of makes sense. Yeah, do 100 a day, live to 100 years old, whatever motivates you, I suppose. But that's our Qigong movement. Yeah, it's calming because you're threading that vagus nerve, which regulates the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you time that with the breath and get that nice stretch on the front line, time it with the exhale, get that nice stretch on the back line, and do it slow, anxiety gone, panic gone.
Yeah, very good for this time, because there's definitely a lot of anxiety going on. Yeah, it's a time of survival. Hexagram 29 is called the pit. It sounds friendly. The pit. And I was listening to Ming talking about this in relation to meditation, but like it's a sign toward the solstice period, and what it represents, the story that it tells is that okay, so there was a war, there was a combatant, you lost. You're in a pit because that's where they put like people that didn't kill, right? They put them in a pit. And because the goal of any like actual conflict is to unify people, not to conquer. So if you go to war with somebody, you want their best people, and these people survived. The people that you just put in the pit actually survived you attacking them. Oh, so maybe you want them around, right? Maybe you want, hey, you should join us, right? So that's the sort of condition of the story that it's telling.
Repeat that. it's not about winning the war, it's about unifying the people. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah. So yeah, we're a long way. Okay, so we might live in barbaric times, just so you know, where because I was just listening to this. Ming was talking about definition of one of the definitions of barbaric are people who live at the boundary, right? That's the notion. Yes, those other people, right, that live at the boundary. But also, what it means, one of the indicators that we live in a barbaric time is the justification for murder. Okay, this bear with me. So that we actually think that we can think of a good reason why we should kill someone, right? Even war, right, is a kind of justification for murder. But so in a time of which we're talking about, there's a reason why Confucius loved the culture of the Zhou, is because what was put forward is a different culture where if you're going to, conflict might be inevitable, but ultimately the reason why you have conflict is to have unity. That's the whole point, not to conquer or murder, but to bring people together. Ultimately, even if you lose, even if you are losing, if you know that the noble end of this is unification, that actually might put you in a position to be like, okay, I'm losing, how can we make a deal? Or if I'm, fighting to the bitter end, that's when we come to the pit. Because that's the bitter end, is that you're in a pit now. You lost. You actually, this is the definitive moment that you've lost. And so what is it that you're being offered is a way out. And that way out is to join forces.
Can't beat them, join them.
Right. So I described this to a friend of mine today, actually, as being in the darkness and fighting go nowhere. So what do you need to say yes to? Would be the invitation of the pit. What is it that you need to think, all right, I've been avoiding, no, like, I'm not listening. Meanwhile, like everything's falling down around you and like, you're off to the pub. So the pit is, instead of fighting the situation and, people bring you food and you throw it back at them and I'll say, I'll never join you. Like, and being that kind of, bitter to the end, it's really about checking yourself and like I say, like, what do you need to say yes to?
Shannon, if I can appreciate you for blowing my mind here, because just last month you blew my mind with the general, talking about the general's job isn't to win the battle, it's to bring the troops home safe. Then the other one, this was just now, it's like the war is not to win the war, it's to unify the people. And kind of gives a new perspective on our American corporate war machine.
Right.
It brings us all together.
Right. Yeah. I got my Nikes on. Yeah, it's pretty, we're on the fence in terms of living in a barbarous time. I think it may be kind of, it's hard to escape.
Okay, we got more chat. Gotta go read 4-year-old bedtime stories. I like the cheap-on idea. Oh, Tiana, you're the sweetest. Okay, well, guys.
Thanks for hanging out.
We're all
go to bed.
Go to bed. Time to leave.
Go read bedtime stories.
Well, unmute yourselves, say hi. Looks like Connie's gonna do it.
I did. I'm a rat and I have a daughter that is a dragon.
Oh.
So it was really interesting, the telephone conversation we had about an hour earlier. So thank you for explaining.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Is that an Earth Dragon, like 88?
76.
Okay, Fire Dragon. Yeah.
Oh, yes, and I'm an Earth.
Relentless. Yeah, relentless. Good luck. That sounds like you're doing great. So, yeah.
We know a lot of fire dragons.
She turns 46 on tomorrow.
Oh,
On this Friday.
right on. Happy birthday. Still hasn't conquered the world yet. No, it's all right.
She's working on it.
Yeah.
There's the conversation of happy birthday, but we also want to say happy give birthday.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You did the work, right?
Right. I used to do that. Well, I still do that. On my birthday, I'll call my mom and thank her for all her hard work because I'm having a good time.
Yeah. Hey,
Thanks.
now that I've witnessed the miracle, shout out to my wife and her kung fu. Yeah, it's a big deal. So happy give birthday. The baby just came out. Baby didn't do that. Baby just came out. Mamas did the work. Well, that's a great place to wrap up our conversation tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, it was supposed to be a quick 5-minute thing.
Shannon and I are going to drink more tea.
Wonderful, and I'm going to rest. Thank you both.
Please rest.
Yay.
There's
Okay.
I highly recommend before he stops this the Nap Ministry. Check out the Nap Ministry. The Nap Ministry. All about rest.
Will you
The
spell
Nap.
it?
Yeah, NAP
Okay.
Ministry. Nap Ministry. Yep.
And I will read 29.
29.
Great. Thank you both.
All right. Ciao.
Bye.